it's Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, for your comments and your thumbs up. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. So today we're going back in history and talk about the black women of World War II. More than 6,500 black women volunteered for the Women's Army Corps during World War II, an era when Negro signified black men and women signified white females. Each of their enlistments posed a bold challenge to other Americans to recognize these soldiers as black and female patriots. So I hope y'all got that. During the 1930s and 40s, a Negro was a black man and a woman was a white female. So black women weren't even recognized. The unwritten record. America's entrance into World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941 was met with pride and patriotism across the country. American citizens surged to enlist in all branches of the U.S. military, and women wanted to serve their country too. Their challenge actually began earlier that year. In May of 1941, Dovie Johnson Roundtree, who would go on to become one of the first 39 black women officers, worked with Eleanor Roosevelt, Congresswoman Edith Norris Rogers, and Mary McLeod Bethune to draft the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, WAAC resolution that was presented to Congress. With support from the General of the Army, George Marshall, the bill passed both houses of representatives and then the Senate in May of 1942. With the WWII in place, the War Department announced that it would follow Army policy and admit black women with a 10% quota. So 10% of the women in the military would be black. Before recruitment and training even began, African American women faced the hurdle of discrimination. Surprise, surprise. Applications for the first contingent of officer candidates was available at the United States Post Office, and many African American women that applied were turned away on the spot simply because of their race. There is no telling how many women this discouraged, as discrimination became a recurring problem for WWII recruitment. So, are we surprised that they faced discrimination in 1942? Now, this article goes on to talk about the black women that joined the military. There was a group that joined the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, and the Marines. But in all of those units, they faced discrimination. Even though they wanted to fight for their country, they wanted to support the war effort, they still faced discrimination. The black press monitored and spoke out against the discrimination in the military. Reports came out that black WWICs with college degrees were being assigned to clean floors and given laundry duty. The press demanded a black woman to be assigned to these black military women to monitor and address discrimination complaints. Good for the black press. In July of 1943, it was announced that the women of WWIC would be classified under the same ranks as soldiers, a big victory for women's equality. African American WWICs didn't receive the same specialized training that white WWICs had, and most were trained in motor equipment, cooking, or administrative work. One of the biggest complaints amongst African American WWICs was that there was no black WWICs overseas. Unfortunately, the WWIC had to abide by all Army regulations, and overseas commanders had the right to designate race or color of units being sent, and no black WWICs were requested. Eleanor Roosevelt intervened on their behalf, however, and the War Department demanded commanders to accept African American WWICs. And as we know, Eleanor Roosevelt was the wife of the wartime president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and she was an advocate for the equality of black American men and women. The 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion was a unit of more than 800 black WACs and was the only black WAC unit to serve overseas. They arrived in England in February of 1945 with the task of working through a huge backlog of mail meant for the troops. General Eisenhower wanted this mail to be delivered as a means of helping with the morale of the troops. When the WAC arrived, they found the building stacked to the ceiling with mail bags and another room filled with packages of spoiled food and gifts, along with rodents. So they saved the worst for the black women, I guess. I wonder what the white women were doing. Charity Adams, one of only 2 black WACs promoted to the rank of major during World War II, was the commander of this unit. She was proud of the work her unit did, performing their tasks in record time. Working in 3 shifts around the clock, they were able to sort all of the mail in half the amount of time expected, just 3 months. Each 8-hour shift averaged more than 65,000 pieces of mail sorted. Once finished in Birmingham, the unit went on to Rouen, France, and ultimately Paris. So you see, they did what black women do. They performed above and beyond what was expected. So they got to travel around Europe doing their job. Good for them. While the Army was by far where most black women served, it wasn't the only place. World War II saw about 500 black nurses in the Army. The Navy eventually saw almost 100 black women, and the Coast Guard had 5 black women who served. The Army Nurse Corps initially followed the War Department's guidelines of the quota system, which severely limited the number of black women admitted. It wasn't, listen to this now, it wasn't until a severe nursing shortage that the quota was lifted. So they had a severe shortage of nurses. So then they had to bring the black women in. I wonder what the white nurses were. Despite the importance that African American women played in the war effort, little is seen of them in war production materials. No, they're not going to show the good side. Only if the nurses have been there, tearing up the place. They are conspicuous only in their absence from recruitment films, as the topic of race was generally avoided. These women not only faced the scrutiny and prejudice of friends and family for wanting to join the military, they also had to deal with discrimination and segregation. It was challenging and often thankless, but they saw the importance of their work and persevered. These women were truly trailblazers, opening up opportunities for black women. They're saying women of color, but I'm going to say black women in an area previously dominated by white men. And for that, they are honored. And yes, they are. We blaze the trails that other people follow and try to get credit. So we always have to stand on our square. Am I right about it? We are everywhere doing everything. And that is why we need to search the information out. Our history is there. Our history is an authentic American history where you had to blaze every trail. We had to build everything from scratch. And that is our agency. And that is why America doesn't want us to know the history. They don't want to put the black people in the recruitment videos. They want the world to believe that white people are doing everything. They're still on that kick. And it's very sad because they've done what they've done, but they haven't done what we've done. Am I right about it? Okay, y'all, thank you for listening. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and have a good evening.